it's really hard, and I don't really understand what it means. I think in some aspects of my life, or how I carry myself, I can really sort of see how I've changed and evolved, and for the better. But there are lots of aspects of my life that I'm a poet, and I'm a school crossing guard, and I'm a cleaner, and I've had to sort of acknowledge that the areas where a lot of judgment, especially on masculinity, around sort of success and ambition, a lot of the sort of financial pressures we put, they just don't. That's not really a part of how I live my life, and to a certain extent, that's I can see how that's a bit immature, But I've created my life in a way that feels most natural to me, and I can't pretend to be interested in a lot of stuff that I'm not interested in. I think how we interact with people around us is probably the most important thing. And I think the more we listen and the more we question our own behaviours, and I think, for me, being sober is part of that. I'm also vegan, so being vegan is part of that. It's just how I want to be in the world. I think I don't want to cause harm. I don't want to be self-involved. I think a lot of drinking habits and alcoholism is sort of self-obsession in a way. And I have enough of that with my writing. I feel like it's just super indulgent to write and drink at the same time. It's like I'm out one of those things.
Welcome to the 1000 Days Sober podcast. My name is Davy. I am not an alcoholic. I refuse to be anonymous. I am someone who lives a self-led life, alcohol-free as fuck, and I spend every waking moment of that life helping other people do the same. Like right now, brothers and sisters. Kaboom! Today, I am sitting down with, get my hair up there a little bit, I'm sitting down with Roberto Pastori, or as I know him, Bert. He is a Welsh-Italian poet whose work explores loss, love, and what it means to inhabit a body that remembers. His latest collection, Graveyards on Other Planets, published by Parthian Books, is a luminous and haunting meditation on grief, identity, and transformation. The kind of writing that doesn't just describe pain, but alchemizes it. And in this conversation, we explore the intersection between creativity and sobriety, what happens when we stop using alcohol to manufacture courage and instead learn to meet ourselves on the page. We talk about the myth of the tortured artist, about the quiet rituals of writing, and about how sobriety sharpens the senses rather than dulls them, and how poetry can become a spiritual practice of self-connection. We also get into the emotional economy of men and fathers, how alcohol creeps into our sense of identity, and what it means to find your voice when the world is trying to teach you to shut the fuck up. If you've ever wondered whether giving up alcohol might cost you your creativity, or whether it might finally set it free, this episode will give you the answer. And his book, Graveyards on Other Planets, his poetry book, is absolutely fantastic. So please go and check it out, okay? So without further ado, I'll shut the hell up and leave you in the capable hands of the humble, the absolutely super talented, wonderful, safe, beautiful Roberto Pastori. Roberto Pastori!
All right, Lee, how's it going?
That's a lot of books in the background. Or is it a lot of books and a lot of vinyl?
A bit of both. This is just some of our books. It's a bit of a messy stacks.
I like it, though. It's like, it's creative. It's like, do you know what I mean? It's real.
We like to be surrounded by our stuff. Yeah, we like the multiple things to look at in our living room.
Yeah, as you can tell with my background, I just don't want you to see the unmade bed, dirty knickers and underpants everywhere and socks lying on the wall. But you don't drink alcohol, right?
No. I think I'm 7 years sober.
I was going to ask you, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever drink? So just tell me about how did you first discover alcohol? What were your drinking days like? And then we'll go on to why you quit.
Okay. I think sort of a lot of people have a similar, in the UK anyway, I guess, like we all have quite a sort of similar story. We sort of try some of our parents' liquor cabinet type stuff. So I think we had limoncello from probably some holiday that my parents had been on. So I think the first thing I remember drinking or getting drunk on was limoncello. And really liking it. I guess I was about 14, maybe. ish. And then that was also around the sort of same age I started going to pubs with my school friends. And I think we had a bit of a couple of years underage drinking in pubs, which I remember being fun. And then a bit of a schism. I remember a bit of a schism happening with my friends. Like, I think there was sort of some drug use, and like, I think it was kind of choosing one or the other. So I do remember sort of stopping going to the pub for a while and going around people's houses. So there was still drinking involved with that. Then when I went to university, this was about 2001, when I was about 21, 22. That became then more of a lifestyle, I think, because I had so much time on my hands, I think, as a student. My course, so I studied creative writing and art history. And there wasn't a lot, in my first year especially, there wasn't a lot of work to do, I suppose. And I had a student loan, and drinking was cheap. So at that point, I think I started drinking more regularly, like on more of a daily basis, nightly basis and daily basis. So for a few years, I think I was drinking quite a lot, but I was kind of managing it okay. And I kind of had a romanticized idea about writing and drinking that I think is, it's part of the culture. I think a lot of it is this sort of romantic idea of going to pubs and writing, and being hungover and writing, and staying up late and writing. And so I believed in that a lot at the time. And yeah, I think I got a bit unhealthy from it for a short time. And then it became less a part of my life.
Before we talk about why you stopped drinking, you touched a little bit on it there, but just to share a little bit of my story. When I go back and analyze why I drank alcohol, I think there are two particular things that stand out for me. One was a need to receive approval from outside of myself to fill my cup of self-esteem and self-worth. And because I got that through being the biggest idiot, and everyone thought that was funny, actually doing everything first was the biggest idiot, and doing everything to the extreme. Yeah. So alcohol became a big part of that. But then it just slowly morphed into Seth Godin always writes, people like us do things like this. And it just slowly morphed into, I drink alcohol because the rules and the customs of society dictate that this is what I do. And I unconsciously follow the rules and the dictates of the society. So like a lot of people look back and say, I drank for this reason, that reason, and that reason. And a lot of mine was just very unconscious. And then when I became conscious of it, I didn't want to drink anymore. What were the reasons that you drank? I know you mentioned the creativity part, but was there any other reasons you think when you look back on it that you was drinking?
Yeah, I think initially, I think it was so ingrained in the culture that it is one of those things. I agree. It's kind of not something you question. It's so normalized. In a way, I'm kind of grateful for a lot of the friendships that I created through going to pubs and and drinking after school and stuff like that. What is sort of the long-term sort of angle of looking at that is sort of seeing how some friends have then like stuck with it to the point of like their lives are ruined, from it. Why did I to be honest, I really like the chaos. I think something about how my brain works really felt comfort in sound and the sort of blurred sight. I remember consciously, like, my vision isn't great, like not wearing my glasses when I went out, because I liked the blurriness. I liked the noise and the lights, and I loved that. That felt like a really comfortable place for me, and I'm not sure why. But I still kind of miss that. To be honest, yeah, so I think a lot of but then, creating chaos as well at a time in my life where there weren't many consequences for it. I enjoyed that as well. It's when you start living a life where there's consequences, which is, a real life really, that you have to sort of become more conscious of how you're living that life and making decisions that don't hurt people around you and stuff like that. So I think I used it as a tool for self-comforting and sort of wallowing a little bit. I think a lot of my drinking sort of happened more when I first left home, and it was a case of like I associated it with freedom. That idea of becoming your own person. You can be anyone you want in the world. You can create yourself again because no one from your past knows you. I associated that all together with the excitement of being in a new city, the music that was around at the time, going out, having new friends. It all fitted at the time. I think in the course of a lifetime, if you're living correctly, we leave these things behind. I think you move on to the next thing. And as you move on, you can put that in its little box in the past. And I think what I see in lots of people that I have known is this inability to leave things behind. And I think that's more of an addictive personality than, luckily, I think I don't really have that too much.
I really appreciate that. When you said, moving out for the first time. And so for me, when I moved out at 18, I was already a massive drinker then. But funnily enough, when I moved out, I started smoking. And I despise cigarettes, but all of a sudden I became a smoker. It's like pretty nuts, right? I just want to touch upon what you talked about, leaving things behind and moving forward, because I don't know if any of my old friends listen to this podcast, but I certainly know I've had feedback on social media. When I don't do it anymore, but I used to post and talk about my journey on my own personal page, Facebook page. I don't have a personal Facebook page anymore. But what happened when I used to do it is I would get criticized because my friends would feel I was judging them. And something you just said, I just want to try to explain what happened to me when I left my friend circle. And a good example is when I tried to stop drinking to save my first marriage. It didn't work. I stopped drinking. I then met Liza. We got married. And then at some point, Liza asked for a divorce. And I just said on a podcast yesterday, I was interviewing an actor, and I said to him the same thing. I got confused because I don't drink anymore. So why does she want to divorce me, right? And she said, I don't like living with a boy. I want a man. And you're a boy. Right. So all my old friends listening to this, this is directed at you and where I'm coming from when I don't spend as much time with you. When I join WhatsApp groups, because we're getting the football team back together, and I see the way you're communicating and I see the things you're talking about, it feels very young. When I see you all going to the gigs in the pub to see the same band week after week after week and doing the same thing, it seems very young. And it doesn't seem like there's growth in there. It feels like there's stagnation. It feels like there's safety and security in the path of least resistance of this. And it just didn't fit with me. I just felt life was pulling me towards something more. It was pulling me to grow and develop more consciously. And there's no way I could do that by sitting in a pub talking about how big the tits are on this woman who's just walked past and in the football match. And I like all those things. I like tits. I like football, but there's bigger things going on. I don't know if you want to comment on any of that.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about men that we really, I think, struggle to evolve. Like for me, I feel like really grateful and really lucky that I've had lots of women in my life and that I've listened to them. I feel I don't really know where I'd be if I hadn't done that. So I think there's an element of just listening, which is really important. And I think there's, it's a fine line, isn't it? Because I think we don't want to lose who we are. And a lot of who we are is like who we've been. So for me, I like a lot of the same things that I liked, growing up, and a lot of the same sort of music, and I indulge in that a lot. But I find that the way I indulge in it is quite different now, because I don't want to pretend like I'm the same person that enjoyed a lot of this stuff in the past, because I'm not. And it feels like that's an act, and it feels like it's too comforting almost to live in the past in that way and to be like an old version of myself. I think the process for me of writing has been really helpful in terms of it puts me in communication with who I am now, but also allows me to look back a lot. And the more that I look back from where I am now, the more I can see how much I have changed, which I don't know if I'd be able to do if I didn't have the writing to allow me to do that. I think it's an ongoing thing. Like, being a grown-up is really hard, and I don't really understand what it means. I think in some aspects of my life, or how I carry myself, I can really sort of see how I've changed and evolved, and for the better. But there are lots of aspects of my life that I'm a poet, and I'm a school crossing guard, and I'm a cleaner, and I've had to sort of acknowledge that the areas where a lot of judgment, especially on masculinity, around sort of success and ambition, a lot of the sort of financial pressures we put, they just don't. That's not really a part of how I live my life, and to a certain extent, that's I can see how that's a bit immature, But I've created my life in a way that feels most natural to me, and I can't pretend to be interested in a lot of stuff that I'm not interested in. I think how we interact with the people around us is probably like the most important thing. And I think the more we listen and the more we question our own behaviors, and I think, for me, being sober is part of that. I'm also vegan, so being vegan is part of that. It's just how I want to be in the world. I think I don't want to cause harm. I don't want to be self-involved. I think a lot of drinking habits and alcoholism is sort of self-obsession in a way. And I have enough of that with my writing. I feel like it's just super indulgent to write and drink at the same time. It's like I'm allowed one of those things.
What you were touching upon towards the end of your little monologue there was a framework I use in the Strive method, like context over content. So if you use the metaphor of a conversation, the content is what you talk about, and the context is how you talk about it. That's what I felt when you was talking there. And for me, this is a really important thing that I crossed over with my friends. So a big part of my context is I need to show up like authentic and as who I am, right? Yeah. And I'll give you an example. Me and Jude, my son, was in Bridgend not that long ago when we was just sitting in a restaurant waiting for our food to come out, when I saw 3 of my friends fall out of a pub. And the initial, what happened in that moment was a part of me said, ignore them, pretend you haven't seen them. And then I kind of rose above the line a little bit. I got into self-energy, and I'm like, Lee, go see your mates. So I go out to see them, and they're all like, Ching, because they call me Ching in Ogmovera. Hey, Ching, oh my God. And then they jump on me, we take selfies, and they're like, oh my God, you're amazing. My mate actually started crying. I haven't seen you for so long. You're the best. And they're kissing me and hugging me. There was no part of me in that moment that felt comfortable and safe and wanting to be friends with my friends. All that happened in that moment was, get the fuck away from me. You're drunk as fuck, and you do not behave like this when you're not. And so I have a problem with that, because my context is I want to show up authentic, and it's really difficult for me when people. I think alcohol makes people fake. It brings out the fakeness in them, or it continues the charade. And I have a great difficulty in playing the game. Like I don't want to play the game, because if I play the game, like I'm just I'm in my ego, and if I want to be in self, like, how do I have compassion? And it's like, it's really difficult. So I try my best to like love these guys, but it's energy that I don't want to expend on relationships. You know what I mean?
I do. I totally understand that. And I think it is like, I think sort of the energy is what makes it so difficult. I think you're in different mindsets, and that's really uncomfortable. And I think for me personally, I think a lot of men drink like that to allow themselves to not, that's not who they are, but I feel like masculinity is so repressed that, people drink to allow themselves to hug their mates, tell each other they love them, things that they don't feel able to do without the socially accepted defense mechanism that I was drunk. So I think in a way, your mates or a lot of people, that I know do that just to allow themselves to express a part of themselves, which culturally they might not feel comfortable expressing. And I think it's sad that they culturally have succumbed to that so much that, that they don't just allow themselves to do it. And I think hopefully we're getting better at that. But I feel for a lot of men, it's still that kind of drinking football culture that allows them to touch each other, hug each other, and express how much they like each other. It's just, it's a bit of an indictment of how little we're actually comfortable with, with each other as men in this country. Obviously, coming from like an Italian background myself, there's equally toxic kind of macho kind of culture, but it's very affectionate and expressive about that. So, like for me, that's quite uncomfortable. Trying to sort of read those social cues about like, oh, we're not allowed to like, hug and kiss each other, because that's just how I was brought up, my uncles and my cousins and everyone I knew in Italy. So yeah, I think there's an element of British drinking culture, which on one hand, that isn't who they really are. That's a very kind of heightened version of who they are. But on another hand, it's kind of closer to what they really want to be like, but they just can't tap into it in their daily lives. I think
what you what you've just woken up. Let me do that again because I just coughed all over you. I think what you just woken up in me there was an opportunity to be a leader, more of a leader here. Because I think what happened in that moment with my friends is there was I think what happened was my neuroception, my radar system that examines for threat to keep me safe. Whenever it pinpoints people who are drunk, the unpredictability of a human being who's drunk makes it unsafe. So the neuroception picks up lack of safety. It then activates my nervous system. And then I go into a kind of, it's not really fight or flight. It's more of the disassociated shutdown state, but it's not like I'm playing dead, but it's on that spectrum of the dorsal vagal, right? So I'm kind of like shutting down. So that doesn't allow me to go into compassion of, oh, this is my friends just want to express love. So I think in that moment, to be a leader is like, in that moment, I need to calm my nervous system. If I calm my nervous system, then I'm going to get out of my head. And then for a brief, short period of time, I can have compassion with my friends and then be able to say, okay, you drunk fucking idiots, get the fuck out of my life now because I want to get on it. And I know my mates, like if I speak like that and talk to them, they don't hold any grudges against me. They're under no illusion that when they've had a drink, they're idiots. Like we've had those conversations. I was an idiot when I had a drink. No, people like me because I was an idiot, and people loathe me because I was an idiot. So I think there's a nervous system management piece for me there. Where I can get close to them.
Yeah, I agree. But I also, I think like sort of, it's good to question that because we're sober or, that this state of mind that we're in is equally not the only state of mind and not reality. I think for me, and like from listening to what you were just saying, there's an element of fear that comes with sobriety, of the unknown, or of like I say unpredictable behaviour, and I wonder if that's a kind of form of intoxication in itself. This kind of like, which leads to anxiety and this kind of need to feel safe and to sort of create frameworks within our life that kind of give us this false sense of safety. And I part of me personally sort of misses that sort of sense of chaos or unpredictability that comes with other states of mind, that in a way feels closer to reality, in that reality is unpredictable, is chaotic, and we don't really have this control that, for me, like I need that sense of control too, and I'm very fearful of a lot of things. So for me, it's kind of like that. It's a bit of a negative exchange that I make for a situation that for me is a worse one, drinking and being drunk, but it's also plays out in an almost negative way in my sort of daily life as well, in that I've become more in need of those sort of control, and sort of fear is become more prevalent, as a result of it, because we don't have the blowouts in the same way. I at the end of a hard day, I can't give myself this excuse to forget about it. I have to process everything. So yeah, I just think it's, for me, like reminding myself that this reality I'm living in is better, but it's not the real one either. They're all versions of ways of looking at the world.
I mean, I think one of the things you're saying there is I give you an example of my own, and just tell me if I'm way off base. But I obviously, when I stopped drinking when I was 35, I wouldn't even say it was stopping drinking was a part of the process. So have you ever heard of Kazimir Dabrowski and positive disintegration?
No.
So he talks about your evolution being not age related. So I'm going to be wiser when I'm 50. It's more conscious. So you can have like a more conscious 14-year-old than a 80-year-old, right?
Sense. Yeah.
And I think for me, a part of my conscious development was stopping drinking, that I went up a few levels at a video game. But it wasn't until I really started to train to be a life coach, where after Liza said, I don't want to live with a boy, and I'm like, I need to do something about this. And I started to understand what boy energy looked like and felt like versus what healthy masculine energy and healthy feminine energy felt and looked like, that I went up another few levels in the video game. And what happened as I was going up in these levels of the video game and I became more self-aware, there was parts of me that started to emerge where I was really afraid of the unknown. So yesterday, I sent a random note to my friend, said, have you organized something for bonfire night for the kids? And they started to send me these links of these different places to go to. And I started to look at them. I'm like, that one's 50 quid. I'm not going to that one for 50 quid. This one, but it doesn't say if the tickets are sold out. Is it going to rain? Do we want to go in the rain? Where is it? How do I get there? Those are the things that freak me out now. And I think it might be related to the fact that my life is not as chaotic as it used to be. So parts of me are not used to being, they don't like the silence because, I grew up in a chaotic household. I grew up in a very turbulent lifestyle. The alcohol and the drinking and going out with the boys and getting smashed. My daughter, she's 9. She said, as you know her, she said to me the other day, Dad, why have you been beaten up so many times? That lifestyle, and now all of a sudden you're like alcohol free as fuck, you're more conscious, you kind of chill. You can see how it is kind of like, in one respect, I would call it an area of growth. I'm glad it's happening to me, because each time I get to like calm my nervous system and be like, it's just bonfire night, dude. It's a bit of rain. Just go out and enjoy it. Like I'll check in with myself. What is really going on with you? Why are you so worried right now? And so is that kind of like on the wavelength of what you was talking about?
Definitely. And I think knowing you, I know that you are one of these people that you will question your reactions to everything. And I like seeing that. That's really interesting to me, because I don't think I'm as good at like that immediate, like, I need to examine this. Like for me, it takes years sometimes. So I'm slower at it. yeah, that is kind of what I mean. I think like smaller things set me off that I know are silly and inconsequential, and I don't really care about. And I think that's just because my life has gotten so much smaller and more controlled that I'm sort of protecting what little I've got. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of comfort in sort of the drinking and like ruining your life because it's not hard work. It's easy, and also if you're drunk enough, you don't care. It's only when you step out of it, you realize, you look around at the chaos. So yeah, I'm really grateful to not be living like that at all anymore, And I think for me, like, the thing that scared me the most was blackouts and forgetting everything. I think the way I live my life is so dependent on remembering and revisiting my life and like going back and looking over and examining stuff, that I think the idea of losing chunks of it is just terrifying. Like that's eventually what made me stop. Was that, I was just couldn't remember anything, so I kind of thought, what's the point?
Yeah, but blackouts for me were like a little bit different. I wasn't worried about not remembering per se, because it just became like so normal for me to go out and semi blackout or blackout. Like I was actually really surprised when I started to help people to overcome alcohol reliance, that whenever I looked at the alcohol use disorder tests and all that kind of stuff, that there was so much focus on the dangers of blackout. Because in my experience talking to my friends growing up, we just all blacked out all the time. It was just a parcel of what we did. My main concern around blackout, now I look back on it, is I've got no qualms about admitting that there's a monster inside of me. Like I am human, and we know that humans can do the worst things in the world and the greatest things in the world. I don't think I'm any different. And I think alcohol releases the cage. And when you get to a certain point, you end up doing things and behaving in ways that are just so way out of integrity. And so like when my daughter says about my fights, for example, I have to broach that. Like I have a big scar here on my arm, see? And I told her I did it falling on a fence. I didn't tell her I got beaten up and stabbed, and that I could have died because I was so drunk. I didn't even know where the fuck I was or how I managed to get to the sex clinic, the sexual transmitted disease clinic I ended up in, where this guy kind of like ends up stitching me up. But there was a part of my humanness, the dark masculinity, I guess, that just wanted to just do those ridiculous, stupid things, like sex is another area where you just, there's all these rules and constraints, and all of a sudden you're fucking drunk and you're with someone else's drunk and all the rules go out the window, and it's chaos to the extreme. And so I never thought, I need to stop drinking because of this. But I look back in hindsight now, I don't drink and think, thank fuck, I got some modicum of control.
Yeah. That for me is like, I wasn't sort of drinking much at that point anymore anyway. And when I did, because I think there's such huge gaps between it was worse. And it wasn't until Sean, my wife, sort of said, okay, well, she was going to stop completely, because she would have like a glass of wine every now and again or whatever. And we just kind of thought, okay, we'll do it together. And we've just done it together. And it's kind of easy, I think, when you're doing it with someone. When you sort of make lifestyle choices like that together, I think it's quite easy, because she's also sort of vegan. So it's very easy then to be like, this is what we do when we go shopping. This is what we buy. And, it's kind of weird being the only drunk person or the only meat eater in a household. So that works out for me. But yeah, for me, like blackouts were quite scary, I think. I think that brought a lot of fear around that, and I think that's quite a common. So like John Berryman, the sort of famous sort of alcoholic poet, died by suicide eventually, but wrote a lot of, he wrote the Dream songs, which he had sort of a persona called Henry, who was kind of an alter ego of himself, and he'd sort of talk about addiction and alcohol and things like that quite a lot. And one of the dream songs is about his fear of like what he had done that he couldn't remember when drinking. I think he had a recurring sort of thought that he might have like killed people, or he just had no idea that he'd sort of imagined that he'd killed people. And then he'd have to sort of go through each day, he'd have to sort of go through like the people he knew and just make sure that everyone was all right. And I mean, that kind of level of and he I think one of the dream songs ends with "Nobody is ever missing," which is one of my favorite of his lines, because he just has to sort of make sure there's no one missing, because that's how scared he was that he'd caused harm, you know. So yeah, that sort of level of fear it becomes like impossible to continue to make those decisions. Surely, you know, you'd hope.
Well, imagine how many people in the world probably are great, perfect citizens, and they have got really drunk one night, and they've either killed someone in a fight, or they've got in their car drunk and they've killed somebody. And then and they would be perceived by the community as being upstanding citizens.
Yeah.
And they might even think they did nothing wrong up until the point when it happened.
It just takes one moment, doesn't it?
One moment. And I always think, what a waste. This is why, like, I took up the mantle like 17 years ago to try to help people quit alcohol, because it wasn't just the devastation that I could see, or the potential for devastation. It was, to me, it was the most insidious drug, because everybody just fucking loved it. Like, so a good example is when I did my 20 odd stitches, my mum initially thought I was dead. Someone had got back to, I was in Cyprus. I didn't want anyone to know it. It got back to it. I'd been stabbed. So she thinks I'm dead. But I just thought the whole thing was just funny. I thought it was an act of my manlyhood. It became a story that I would tell. People would ask me about it, and I would wear the scar with pride, because that was part of what I call the liquid lie, right? Like, the liquid lie is this structure and system of how alcohol is sold and consumed going back centuries. That's part of the liquid lie. And I want to go on to another part of the liquid lie, actually. One of the main reasons I wanted to get you on a podcast. Another part of the liquid lie for me is, when it comes to people who are highly creative as well, is like, I need to drink or take drugs to create. And I see that as almost like an excuse for the parts of you that want to continue drinking to allow you to continue drinking. I mean, it's up there with, I need to drink because if I don't, I won't be able to mix and socialize with my friends. Or I need to drink because if I don't, I'll never get rid of this pain. It's another thing, but it really is quite powerful if you're an artist and you've been drinking or taking drugs as you've been creating your art or playing music. And now all of a sudden, you've got to go and play with a band, or you've got to write something clean.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts and your personal journey with that?
I think it's a really complicated issue. And I think you have to sort of almost take each drug as a separate question for that. So with alcohol, I used to believe, and I think possibly other writers in the past have also believed, that what it does is it creates situations in your life that I felt were worthy of writing about. So I think as a young man, because alcohol gave me more confidence and more sort of socializing skills, it created enough sort of chaos and interaction and nights out. And that's what I wanted to write about at that point in my life. I think I was quite influenced by similar writers that would write about going out and drinking and, all that stuff. So it created a situation that provided stuff to write about. It didn't help with the writing. And I think alcohol is a massive hindrance to subtlety as a writer. I don't think anyone's a better writer from drinking. But I think there was a stage in my life where I thought like it created enough drama to give me subject matter. And I think that's a different thing. I'm really glad I don't feel that way now. So in terms of other drugs, I do feel like there's been huge leaps, sort of cultural, artistic leaps, caused or created by specific people taking specific drugs. So I think if you just look at the 60s and like the beginning of the 60s to the end of the 60s, the almost like Renaissance like kind of transformation of like music and film and visual culture as a result of, you know, sort of weed and LSD and is like undeniable. And I think it's certain people who were able to process those experiences in really interesting ways. And I think science has really benefited from certain drugs like LSD as well. I don't think we'd have like, you know, the internet if it wasn't for LSD. But in terms of alcohol, it removes all subtleties, which I think like when you're a young writer that is kind of a bit overly romantic and wants to be like raw and authentic, there's all these lies about that sort of being like they're sort of direct, you know, I'm bleeding on the page kind of bullshit. And really what it does is that it makes you sort of speak quite directly in a way that is very unfiltered. And that's become less and less interesting to me as I've grown up. You know, I much prefer work that repays revisiting, rereading, that has layers, that is consciously thinking about things like language and consciousness in the mind. And I don't think you're able to get to those places with alcohol at all, because actually what they do is they just cut off those sort of transmitters. So yeah, I think like it's drug by drug, but I do think like some drugs, I think, you know, maybe like they might have benefited you once, and then what people then do is they become addicted and they think that they're going to get constant payoffs, and it's like you know, it's not going to work again and again and again. I think you have maybe like some kind of epiphany or some kind of creative moment, and I think then you just need to like step away from the drug and just try and revisit that sort of moment of, you know, explosion, rather than it being the drug. I think a lot of the time you can't just give sort of drugs to anyone and they're not going to be like writing Sgt. Pepper's. You know, you need the specific people that have a specific abilities and ability to sort of not go mad as well. Because I think, you know, you look at a lot of musicians, there's a romanticism around people that have really, you know, actually sort of been like Syd Barrett and stuff like that, who's a massively revered character. I think it's just like a really tragic story. This was like this sort of young man, genius, that had a really original approach to songwriting, created a whole kind of genre, and just wasn't able to cope with what he was doing to his brain eventually. And we lost like decades of great music as a result of that. So I think it's that. It's a lot of it's usage and a lot of it's who's taking these things. But for the average person, I don't think they're going to benefit at all. And also, you know, yeah, drinking and the creative process is just a nightmare. It's just I've got notebooks from, you know, when I was at university, it was just like rubbish, absolutely rubbish. And it's, you know, it's very in the moment, but it's just like that moment was not good.
Becoming alcohol-free as fuck is the first step, the start of something amazing, not the end of something. What is it the start of? It is the start of living a self-led life, right? So how do you do that? Well, once you become alcohol-free as fuck, you need to find something else to put your teeth into. Someone like Roberto Pastori is poetry. For somebody else, it's building a company. For someone else, it's being the best father or the best husband they can be. And to do that, you are going to need some help. You're going to need a guide to find that power from within yourself. And I am going to offer myself up as a solution, as a guide for you. So if you want to do one-on-one coaching with me, you want to check it out, email me at thestridemethod@gmail.com, or you can WhatsApp me on +44 753 789 6829. Okay, I'm going to shut up, leave you in the capable hands of Roberto Pastori. Yeah, I like the way you distinguish between alcohol, almost like creating content, right? It's like when you read you see that some flash in the pan celebrity has released an autobiography at the age of 22, and you're like, what is in there? I actually had I had a coaching session the other day with a 24-year-old, and I have this process that I go through. It's so I have this framework that I use when I'm coaching called approval, security, and control. It should be security, approval, control, but I call it approval, security, and control, where I have this hypothesis that whenever you take action, it comes from the need to keep yourself safe. If you can't keep yourself safe, then you try to get approval to keep yourself safe. And then if you can't get your approval, then you'll use control to get that approval to keep you safe, or you'll use control to get you safe. So what I do is I go get my client and I'll say, okay, from 0 to 5, what is your happiest memory? What is your sad memory? And then 6 to 10, 11 to 15, and we go through the years to find the patterns of approval, security, and control. So they can see the roots of, oh, wow, like control is a real issue for me. Control is a real issue in my life. And that's where I need to work. And when you're working with someone in the early 20s, it's over really quickly because you've got you go through their life so quickly. So it's an example of, I think what makes me a great coach is I'm such a fuck up. Like I've experienced so many. I've been a drunk. I've been addicted to alcohol, gambling, pornography, sugar, coffee, cigarettes. I've not been addicted to drugs, but I took a load of them. I've been divorced. I've been the best and worst father and the best and worst husband. And I think all those experiences make me a very interesting person, and also be able to relate and to be able to guide people away from those pitfalls. But to latch onto what you were saying, that's very different to I need alcohol to do this. I need pornography to fulfill this need. Like, they're very different things, and I'm really glad that you separated them.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And I think in terms of, because like for the last 4 years, I hosted like a poetry group here in Cardiff, which is kind of stopped now because the cafe's closed down. But a lot of the people that would come to that would be sort of quite young, people in their 20s. They're all amazing, great. And they were very much of that, I will write about my experiences, and their experiences were, quite, in a way, quite comfortingly sort of similar to sort of, experiences that I was having at their age, and probably that my parents were having at their age. They're sort of going out, they're meeting people, they're falling in love, they're having breakups. And they can only really write of that in the moment, because they haven't really had enough of the sort of experience of writing or living to be able to sort of step out of those things and sort of view them in a more subtle way, or in a way that isn't just an expression of self. And I think like one thing that I really tried to get away from is like there's a lot of voices in the world, and like you said, like everyone's writing memoirs and everyone's writing autobiographies, and that's only important or relevant if you're offering something outside of like, this is my life and this is how I lived it. I think it has to be this is what I've gained from these experiences, or this is like an insight that I've gained from those experiences, or this is like a weird juxtaposition of different emotions that I felt as a result of having different experiences. And I think that is much more something that I'm interested in, because I think those are the things that we don't talk about in everyday life with each other. I think we're much better at like communicating about our immediate feelings or our experiences. I think we're quite comfortable in talking to each other about falling in love or breaking up or being hurt, but I think it's the thought processes that go on behind those things, or the feelings of the kind of godlessness of those feelings of being kind of quite singular in the world. The things that we don't know how to talk about. So through writing, I think it's a very important method of communicating these sort of lower feelings, these kind of more hidden back of the brain feelings. So I think that is ultimately a lot of the goal of like what you do and what I do is quite similar. It's just like getting more to the root of something as opposed to just that sort of surface level of experience in an egotistical way of like, I just want to tell you what happened to me. It's much more about like what happened to me and how I process that is quite universal. And I think there's a really emotional sort of impactful thing about sharing the parts of ourselves that we thought was secret and just ours, when you realize that they're not, that we're all kind of part of one thing. It kind of breaks us down a little bit, and that is kind of how we become quite humble, that we don't just think our experiences are important or how we feel about something is important, that we sort of recognize that we're just responding in a way that a plant might respond to the world. It's just we're processing, and we're really connected in that way. I think it's a very divisive time in the world, and sort of to know that like below all of the levels of public life, there's a root similarity between a lot of us. I think that's a lot of the purpose of what we are trying to do, I suppose.
Yeah, I was thinking this morning. I've been thinking of politics a lot lately since, as you know, I had a conversation with my dad, and he told me that he was going to vote for reform, and then immediately as an immigrant trying to get into the US and half Chinese, English person living in Wales with a Korean wife and a Korean daughter and a Korean family, that was a bit of a shock to me. And I've been thinking about it a lot lately. And one of the things that came up for me this morning was like, it was almost like a poker analogy. I work in a poker industry, and they always say at a poker table, do not talk about politics, don't talk about religion, right?
Right.
And when I'm around, like I'm with a very Christian family, my wife's side, and I really want to talk about the fact that I'm not, and they are, and I'm really curious, but I kind of like avoid it. And then on the political spectrum, if I was in a room with somebody who voted for Trump or voted for Farage, it doesn't sit with me politically, and I would kind of avoid it. And it's almost like, let's avoid these things because it's easier. But then the way I see it is I can't have a relationship with this person. Like, how can I have a relationship with my dad if we can't talk about the core values that drive our decisions in our life and the way that we think and we feel? Yeah. And I think today, especially, I feel as somebody who's really open, like, and talks about anything, I feel silenced. I feel afraid to talk about certain things. Christ, I just went into the US, and, I was told by my lawyer that I had to go through all of my social media accounts and delete anything that I'd said about Trump. Yeah. I'd go through my email accounts and delete everything. Like, so if you're living in that kind of society, it kind of like, I don't like it. It's like, it's a control thing for me, I guess,
Yeah. I know where you're coming from with that. I think I do this, and I know you probably do as well. I think you just kind of expect people that you know or interact with to have a sort of the same sort of fundamental ideology of
like a foundation. Like a foundation is like the same.
Something sort of basic.
We won't kill people.
Right? It's not, It doesn't seem like you're asking for much. It's just kind of like decency, really. But I think, I don't know, what I've like sort of been able to sort of understand is that a lot of people that are voting this way or are super religious, it's a different mindset, that they're not really thinking about it in a moral way, or they're not even really thinking about it. It's just kind of, they're in a bubble that is kind of feeding them this information. It allows for their friendships to carry on, and that they'd rather just have an easy life. It's really hard to speak out against your family. And I think a lot of it is kind of a bit sort of cowardly, and also just a bit that, that sort of protecting yourself. And I think it's fear, really. Deep down, I think if we had conversations with a lot of these people, we'd probably get on with them. But it's really hard to get to that point, because I don't really want to have conversations with people that are like voting to hurt the people around me, or to hurt my friends, or to diminish my life in some way, because it feels like a foundational thing, isn't it? Like, we look out for each other. But I think that's just how we think about it. Also, there's some comfort in having got to this age and sort of realizing that these things come in waves, and that they just swing as well, to back and forth a bit, and that this isn't a unique moment necessarily in history. It's just a particularly bad one. But it's almost how a lot of people learn, oh, this was a mistake, by having to live through it. Like, for voting for it, realizing what's happened to their lives, realizing what's happened to like their family has like left them, or not talking to them anymore, and that's how they learn. Whilst I think for people that are living maybe a slightly more examined life, or thinking about other people in their world a bit more, then it's just kind of a given. Well, yeah, this is an obvious thing. We don't. The idea of voting, and when you're actually sort of harming your own family or friends, it's just. It's just like, there's no defense to it, really. Yeah, it just feels insane. So much of this moment feels insane that I've sort of given up trying to sort of justify it, really. But I think it's just like, what I've learned is people's brains work differently. They're not thinking about it that much. They're not giving it that much thought. They're not putting their emotional lives into it. They're not putting their moral thoughts into it. They're just voting for the guy that they think is funny, or that their mates like, or it's a very sort of basic thing. And I think in the past, it was kind of like your newspaper just told you what to vote for. And now it's, whatever social media platform you're on will tell you what to vote for, and it's equally made up.
Yeah, I was telling you the other day how I went on Facebook, and I rarely go on there, and all of a sudden they're sending me the algorithm is sending me reels. I'm not even searching for anything. Like, I just went on there to check a message, and I'm getting reels of Muslims beating up coppers in some part of the UK, and it's like, this is Keir Starmer's Britain. And so I'm like, oh, the algorithm thinks a 50-year-old white man wants to see this. I don't want to see it, because I know I mean, to me, it's identity nonsense. Like, I was talking to my mum about it just after my dad, and she said, well, you've got these different colored people now outside the off license, and when your niece comes out of there, they're pestering her, and she sees the rhetoric of the color or the religion or the immigrant, like the story, like there's no white guys that are ever going to harm her. And if you look at the statistics, I mean, come on, right? Like,
just fear is a really powerful thing, isn't it? I think if you can scare people enough, then they'll happily accept bad things happening to them,
But it's the same. It's the same with alcohol. It's the same. Like when you talked about the bubble. So let's just say the reform bubble. So I'm in this reform bubble, this reform echo chamber. Every time I say something that aligns with reform's rhetoric, people will agree with me. Like when I talk about brown people sexually abusing young white girls, people will agree with me, right? I mean, that's the same as alcohol. It's like when I say, oh, look at these idiots who don't drink alcohol, who are very judgmental, and alcohol does this, that, people are agreeing with you. For me, like, I want to talk about this a little bit, like on friendships and stuff, because, when people stop drinking, they struggle. Like, one of the biggest reasons that people relapse in my community over the last 15 years is they stop drinking and they don't have friends. So they believe that stopping drinking is a nightmare and it's the worst thing ever because now it cuts them off from their social experiences. Like, for me, I don't want to be in an echo chamber. I don't want to be surrounded by people who agree with me, right? Like, I don't. But equally, I don't want to be friends with people who their core values are very, very different, right? Like, very different. So, like, if I'm forced to have a relationship with them because they're my family, then I will disconnect myself from them as much as I can. But it is not hard to find people who can challenge you or to share their differences of opinion, right? Like, and for me, it's an energy thing and it's a trust thing, right? So for people listening, if you're like, how do I know who to speak to? Trust yourself that you will attract the right people. You know, like, just talk about me and Bert's relationship. Bert's a crossing keeper at my daughter's school. And for many months, maybe a year, we would deliberately go and cross by you and say, good morning, Bert. And through just saying, good morning, Bert, nothing big. Good morning, Bert. How's it going, Bert? I thought to myself, I love this guy's energy. Now, I knew nothing about you, right? I love this guy's energy. And I said to you, do you want to come out for a cup of tea? We went out for a cup of tea. Now we go out for a cup of tea, right? And lo and behold, we are interested in some of the same things. And some of the ways we think about certain things are different. And we sit down and we talk about them, and we don't say, oh, that was wrong. We say, oh, I actually think this about that, right? And so it's not, I know it's really difficult because we don't have the school playground anymore. But I think there's something in trust here. Like, I have never, ever considered, when I go up to somebody and ask them for their number to go and have a cup of tea, I never, ever consider they'll say no. Ever. It's almost like my trust has already got beyond that. You know, so I'm trying to give some hope to people out there that's really struggling. Like, I'm 50 and I can still find friends. Like, come on.
Yeah, I'm sort of constantly surprised by, you know, because of my job, it sort of, I guess it places me in a position of, you know, I'm an instantly recognizable figure. People know what I'm there for. I'm kind of quite sort of neutral. I'm a safe person for children, but also I find, like, for the parents, I'm constantly surprised by how many, like, relationships or friendships or bonds that I formed as a result of just standing there and being just a kind of this neutral person that is just, like, there to help. I think because it removes a lot of the fear that I have about talking to other men as well. Is like, I've got predominantly female friendships in my life, and I'm also quite, you know, reserved, sort of a hobbit. Like, I like to stay at home by myself. I'm not a very social person. So the fact that I get to interact and make acquaintances with people that I wouldn't have known from different areas of life and different cultures from around here is really lovely. And I've had some really great sort of conversations and friendships with people that I've just known from crossing their kids. And even with, you know, the school caretaker, he's a good mate. And I think once you remove a lot of those sort of social barriers of, like, men don't go up to other men and just become friends or talk to each other, a lot of us want to. I think a lot of the dads are just lovely and really, really kind, and they'll give me, like, scarves or coats or shoes to wear, or, you know, they'll check in how I'm feeling. Like, at the moment, I've got, like, a really sore tooth, so I'm on antibiotics for that. And one of the dads was, like, going to go to the pharmacy and pick me up something. I was like, this is so kind, like a level of kindness I've not really sort of expected at this point in my life. So yeah, I think there is a lot around not really sort of unexpected sort of kindness of people in your community. And I think young people know this now already, because less and less young people are drinking. Less and less people in their 20s are going out with their mates to get drunk. They're looking for spaces where there's no alcohol, where they can just have a good time together and go out. So a lot of the reason why the younger people were coming to my poetry group was because it was a non-alcoholic space. It was just in a cafe. And they sort of said, there's not many things that we can go to where people aren't drunk. So I think the young people know this already, but I think for our generation, that was sort of a very drinking culture based. It's something that we're learning now, later on in life, that it's important to be part of your community and sort of find little spaces where maybe we don't have to put on this act or this bravado, and maybe we can just be a bit more gentle and like more ourselves. So it's something that I've sort of lucked upon through just my job, I think, which I wouldn't have done. I think because like you said, when you're not on the playground anymore, the only sort of time that happens is in jobs, like in lots of retail work that I've done in the past. I've just made friends with people that I worked with. And yeah, I mean, those are people that I wouldn't have met otherwise. It's just like when you're thrown together with other people, it's sort of, you just always find a few people in there that become really important in your life. So yeah, I agree. Like, don't give up hope on stuff like that. And alcohol doesn't help with that later on in life at all, I don't think. Like it might have done at some point in my youth, when we're just super awkward and uncomfortable and don't know who we are, and we need that, and we don't know how to speak to girls or stuff like that. It might have helped briefly, but it doesn't. That doesn't last very long. And later on, when you're a bit more confident in yourself and you know who you are, you shouldn't need that.
100%. Do you have to go now, or do you have another 10 minutes?
Yeah, no, I'm fine.
Because I want to talk a little bit about poetry. Your book, Graveyards on Other Planets. Why poetry? What got you into poetry?
I was really, really into music for my teens, and I still am into music, but I don't really play it anymore. But I think I used to sort of, I used to sort of play. I had like played with my mates in the band, and that was really fun. And I think that was my dream at that point. When I went to uni, I ended up doing creative writing because it was just something that I was interested in to learn more about. And I met my tutor from my second year onwards was a guy called Nick Pemberton, who just played a massive role, I think, in my life. He was like a really great tutor, great friend, father figure, really encouraged me to write, really liked my writing. And I think it was the first time that I'd had that encouragement about something creative that I was doing. And that was what I needed. So I really decided to sort of devote myself to that practice. And I did for years around that time. There was like a monthly poetry reading sort of scene there. You sort of go every night and read and meet other people that were writing. And it was really vibrant, kind of lots of young people writing. That was in Carlisle. And yeah, I'm just really, really grateful to Nick mainly just for being someone that would read my stuff and be really encouraging. And we had a lot of the same likes and interests. Like I was really heavily into the beats when I was young. I just fell in love with like Kerouac and Gregory Corso, and that was like my world. And I just, I just was so heavily into that. That was all I read. And then I think when I first moved to Wales, it slowed down quite a bit because I didn't really feel the same enthusiasm around it when I first moved. I sort of lived in the valleys, and there was like not very much of a community for that. So it wasn't really until really about 6-7 years ago that I really started again as a sort of daily practice, sort of writing. And I've always read loads of poetry. I always feel like it's the most natural form of expression for me, and it's also the closest we get to expressing the human condition. I think it, as much as I love reading all sorts of books, I think poetry kind of can change how I look at the world in a way that nothing else can. I just feel it's the most natural form of expression for me in terms of it's how my brain processes stuff and how language works for me. It feels like a very logical form for me of life. Like if poetry didn't exist, I feel like I'd be able to invent it. Like it makes sense as like, this is how I would write. This is how I would use language if I had to just start from scratch. So yeah, I just get really excited by reading poetry, good poetry. There's so much awful poetry. I think it's just something that people don't talk about. It's just so much bad poetry that it's quite cringy, and like to be like sort of say you're a poet because people immediately go to this other place. But it's kind of a weird thing because you don't just sort of say you're a musician because you don't say anything else. Like there's so many different kinds of poetry that I think people just sort of lump them all into one. And I think what I read and what I write is sort of quite specific, and a bit sort of different to a lot of the sort of stuff that you hear about on the radio and things like that. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, Lee.
No, I used to, there was a point in my growth where I was like, do you know what, Lee, you're an artist. But then I'd feel really uncomfortable telling artists that I'm an artist.
Yeah.
Because they would look at me like, I actually, Zia did this very simple drawing called Butt Blow. It's like stuck on our toilet. It's like this guy, it's just like this thing having a poo.
Yeah.
And I look at it and I think it's great. And, we got the local art shop around the corner by West Pizza.
Yeah.
I went in there one day and I said to him, would you do me a big favor and like put this in on a canvas for me? And then when Zia comes in, she'll see it.
Yeah.
But there was a part of me that was thinking that he would want to do it anyway and sell it. Because I looked at it and I'm like, I saw something in it. And then he was like, yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it. You tell me when she's coming in and I'll take it away. And then I'm looking at the other pieces of art and it's like, I don't get it. And so for me, I feel like whenever I talk about me being an artist, there's a little bit of imposter syndrome comes out. But
that's real. And I think like for me, it wasn't until I had my first book published that I actually was like, okay, I'll own up to it. Like I will call myself a poet.
Yeah. Well, what is it?
For decades beforehand,
When I decided that I was going to help people become alcohol free as fuck, as I like to say, the only way I could teach was my own kind of like personal method, I don't want to be solipsistic. Solipsistic, is that the right word?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. But so I'm very careful of saying there are other ways of doing it, but this is what worked for me, And what worked for me actually was there's a lot of people out there, they'll say, when you stop drinking alcohol, right, just focus on that. Like, don't try to give up sugar. Don't try to give up pornography because it'd be too much, right? That wasn't my way. My way was, okay, I stopped drinking. I'm on day one, right? What am I going to fucking smash on day two, right? And for me, it wasn't long, the gap between me stopping drinking and me giving up a 20-year railway career. I actually, if I would have stayed on the railway, I was fast track to become a CEO. So I probably would be a CEO by now. I would retire in 5 years and I wouldn't have to worry about money. Like, that was the position I was in. And I'm like, fuck that. I'm going to leave. I'm going to quit because it's not like I don't identify with it. So when I'm teaching people this, what is really interesting over the last 15 years is how many people choose poetry or writing as the thing that they define as meaning and purpose, or the thing that they would do without getting paid. Like what would you do right now? You go to job for pay. What would you do if you didn't have to? I just want to write. I just want to be a poet, right? Why? Why is it there, do you think?
Well, like I said, it feels like the most natural thing to do. I think as a creature that thinks, I think is to like try and record that in some way, as something that lives in a world and is experiencing a physical world. It's just the most natural way to sort of put a record down of that for me is poetry. It's interesting. I think in relation to, I think, a lot of ex-addicts or ex-convicts writing a lot of poetry as well. I think it's the thing you do most naturally as a teenager without telling anyone. So it's that thing that you want. There's an urge to do it when you're at your sort of most what's the word, like unedited, almost, like, when the veil goes, you want to do it. I've always found it really interesting that teenagers write poetry. Like, most of them do secretly in one way or another. They've written something down in a notebook. It feels like a bit of a necessity, almost. Like, this is like, I've had an experience which is too much for me to almost, my body can't contain it. I need to put it down somewhere. So yeah, like you're saying, there's so many different sort of variations of that, and you can refine it, or you can learn form, or you can just stay in a very raw journal kind of state for it. But I do feel like it's, in one way or another, a bit of a necessity. And there's people I know that don't, have never written, have no interest in poetry. And I don't get that. It doesn't make sense to me, because, like, how can you exist and not want to, in some way, kind of express your like one little tiny atom in the world's experience of that? It feels like it comes with a bit of a knowledge of mortality. I think that is what it is. And I think there's possibly a connection between that and someone that's gone through some really rough times as well, like addiction or something like that, is this coming face to face with your mortality, which I think I had from like the age of 15, like this just like insane physical fear of not existing anymore. So I think that leads to, like, your part of your brain processes that in some way of like, I need to leave something behind. I need to record what it felt like to exist. Because that's all I can do, is like just write that down. And that is the history of humanity, really. You can look at wars, you can look at governments and politics, but really it's the arts that are a true record of our existence, how we felt about things, how we respond to nature and love and everything, So yeah, it just feels like the most natural thing for me to have that impulse to write poetry down. But it can become very wanky, and the most conceited that it gets to, and that's quite common, is like the most removed from its original impulse, which is interesting, because like you can just be so enamored by your own voice and by this kind of combination of words that you've put together, that what you're doing there is just ego. It's just feeding ego. You just want people to sort of recognize your brain as being really interesting, or you as being in somehow heightened person or better person than them. And that's the worst kind of poetry, I think, that revels in its own kind of poeticness. That's the danger, I think. So it's quite nice when children and like ex-addicts, and I know the homeless are sort of encouraged to write a lot as well. When they write in this sort of unrefined sort of state, I think it's really encouraging. I love to sort of see that. I'm really interested in how young people write, which is why I started up the poetry group in the first place, was I really want to know what it's like being 20 right now. Like, that's really interesting to me. I don't really care about someone looking at a tree and describing how beautiful the tree is. That just means nothing to me.
Yeah, I'm really fortunate. I have a 9-year-old who's just a prolific writer, as you know, and I love reading her stuff, because it does give me a window into the soul of what's going on inside her brain and her body and her mind at the age of 9, and I find it really inspirational. Beautifully put, Bert. Would you mind just ending on reading us a poem?
Yeah, I can do that.
From your book, Graveyards on Other Planets?
I'll read something from a new one.
Yeah.
Was there a particular one you're interested in, or anything that you thought that I could just pick one of my own? Yeah.
No, but I do read it. But no, you pick one of your own.
All right. Well, I thought I'd go with this one called Out of Your Life. I thought this might be relevant. You fall out of your life, then you catch yourself inside your life again. One moment removed, the next immersed. Among life, excluded from it. And so it goes without cause or seemingly explanation, as if the interior were translation of some exterior reality. Some say fear, some say ecstasy. You fall out of your life, and then you catch yourself.
Beautiful. How can people get hold of the book?
Hopefully anywhere. Like you go to your local bookstore. If they don't have it, they can order it in for you. It's available online, all the usual places as well. Or Parthian directly. They're the publishers. You can go to parthian.com.
Well, Bert, thank you very much for coming on here and
Thank you.
Sharing your life with people and talking about creativity and everything else we talked about. Really appreciate it. Guys, I'm going to be truthful with you. If I don't really like a book, and I get a lot of people on it, if I don't really like a book, I just don't talk about it. I don't say shit. I just don't talk about it. So when I talk about a book, it's worth getting. Roberto Pastori, Graveyard and Other Planets. Really, really great poetry book. Go read it. It's fascinating. It's lovely. All right,
Thank
Roberto,
you so much,
I'm going to bid you adieu. I need to go to the post office to take something back. I'll see you soon, yeah?
Thank you, Lee. Thanks for having me on here.